Government is in the final stages of establishing the National Water Resources Infrastructure Agency. Now, this means that the ownership of all dams and related infrastructure will be transferred from the Department of Water and Sanitation to that agency. Now, the question is, how will the new agency fix the water challenges? Well, to explain this to us is Dr. Sean Phillips, the Director General of the Department of Water and Sanitation, who joins me now. Doctor, thank you very much for your time. Let's get straight into that very question. How will this new agency fix the water challenges that the country is experiencing right now?
Thank you very much, Paulie. Good morning to you and good morning to all your viewers. In terms of the constitution of our country, responsibility of water is divided between the national government and municipalities. The national government is responsible for national bulk water resource infrastructure, which is basically the big dams and associated infrastructure which capture raw water and then supply it to the water boards, which assist municipalities to purify the water, and municipalities then distribute the water. The National Water Resource Infrastructure Agency that we're establishing is focused on our national function. So it doesn't have any aims to address the challenges that are occurring at municipal level with regard to the management of the municipal water services. We have other initiatives to increase and improve our support and intervention at municipalities to address the municipal water and sanitation issues. But it is also relevant for municipalities where in some areas, for example in Cape Town and Nelson Mandela Bay, where the challenges with management of water and sanitation services have been exacerbated by a shortage of bulk raw water. And in that case, it's important for us as the national department to increase and improve the supply of bulk raw water. So the way that the agency is going to improve and increase the supply of bulk raw water is that by, as you indicated in your introduction, by transferring the ownership of the assets, the dams and associated infrastructure to the agency and the revenue streams associated with those assets. What I mean by that is we sell the raw water from the dams to the water boards and to industry, so we get a revenue stream from that water.
Yeah.
So both the assets and the revenue streams will be transferred to the agency, and then the agency will have a strong balance sheet which it can use to raise a lot more money for investment in new national bulk water resource infrastructure, because as a country we need to invest much more than the government can afford. So we need to raise money in the market from the private sector so that we can have enough money to do the required investment.
All right.
And the main aim of creating the agency is to create an agency with a strong balance sheet which can raise that finance.
As and when this agency comes into being, Dr. Phillips, what becomes the role of bulk water suppliers like Rand Water, Umgeni, for example? Do they get swallowed up into this agency, or do they cease to exist?
No, those water boards that you mentioned are actually providing a support function to municipalities. So as I indicated, the Constitution divides the water functions into national and municipal. Those services that the water boards are providing are actually constitutionally municipal services, and the water boards which fall under us, like the ones you mentioned, are there to support municipalities, to assist them to provide the bulk water services, often which cut across different individual municipalities in a water board area. So they will continue providing those municipal water service functions in support of municipalities. What we're talking about with the NWRIA is just rationalizing and improving the national bulk water infrastructure functions.
I'm completely confused, Dr. Phillips, because it would seem then that this is government trying to, in a way, show to members of the public that we are trying to do something when, in fact, government is simply trying to, I don't know, that there's a saying that you are trying to deceive the public, that you're doing something about this challenge, this water challenge, when in fact there is nothing really new. I'm still confused as to what the role of this agency.
There is something very new, Corley.
Yeah.
At the moment, we are constrained in the amount of private sector finance that we can raise, because at the moment we have an entity called the TCTA, which raises finance for big bulk water infrastructure projects that are part of the National Department's responsibility. The TCTA doesn't own any assets. It's an entity which raises finance in the market. So, for example, you know about the Lesotho Highlands project, a huge project. Phase 1 was completed. We're starting phase 2 now. That was all funded through finance raised from the private sector by the TCTA. But because the TCTA doesn't own any assets, is not able to raise finance without treasury guarantees. By doing what we're doing and by creating the NWRA and transferring the assets there, we're creating an entity which will be able to raise much more finance than we can currently raise. So it is a major step forward, and it will enable government to build more bulk water infrastructure so that supply of raw water doesn't become a constraint to economic growth. And so that there can be more raw water supplied to areas like Nelson Mandela Bay and Cape Town, which have experienced water shortages, raw water shortages in the past.
I'll tell you why I'm saying I'm confused. I'll tell you why I'm saying I'm confused, DG. And that is that I think about a week ago, in fact 2 weeks ago, Rand Water was on TVs throughout, I think, for a good few hours. And they were conducting a presentation, and a very clear understanding of what the role of Rand Water is as a bulk water supplier was that ours is to simply provide raw water, which is the sum total of what you and I have just been talking about. So bulk supplier, but we are not responsible for water reticulation. That becomes the role of municipalities. That means municipalities are the ones that channel the water then into the various communities. And so it would seem to me that this agency is going to do a very similar job to what the bulk water suppliers that are already there have been doing anyway. Am I wrong?
Corley, yes, you're wrong, Corley. You misunderstood the Rand Water presentation.
Yeah.
Rand Water doesn't supply raw water to Johannesburg. We supply raw water to Rand Water. And that raw water comes from the Vaal River system, which is in turn fed from the Lesotho Highlands project. So Rand Water buys raw water from us. Rand Water treats the water.
Yeah.
So the bulk service, there are different types of bulk service. Our national bulk service is providing the raw water, which is financing the Lesotho Highlands Dam, and then we sell that raw water to Rand Water. Rand Water then has to purify the water. So Rand Water runs water treatment works where it purifies the water. That's also a bulk water function, but it's not the national bulk water function. It's a municipal water function to purify the water, and then it transfers through bulk pipelines the water to Johannesburg and other municipalities, and then the municipalities reticulate it. So there's two different types of bulk. There's national bulk, which is the big dams, which is what we're responsible for as the department, and which is going to be transferred to the NWRA. And then there's municipal bulk, which is the major water treatment works and the major bulk distribution lines at municipal level. And then there's the municipal distribution, which is done by the municipalities like Johannesburg.
Yeah. All right. Here's a simpler question for you, Dr. Phillips. As things stand, let's use the example of the past weeks of Gauteng residents being restricted. I think there was stage 2 water restrictions. What is the department's diagnosis of why Gauteng residents experienced that, in particular those that live in high-lying areas?
Our diagnosis is the same as the diagnosis by Rand Water and Joburg Water, Corley, and that is that unfortunately, we had a number of unfortunate events all happening at the same time. And those included heavy load shedding, which made it difficult for both Rand Water and Joburg Water to fill their reservoirs. Secondly, the October rains came late, particularly in Johannesburg, which meant that, coupled with a heat wave, that people were watering their gardens and sprinkling their lawns a lot more than usual, and there was a spike in demand. And that coupled with the heavy load shedding, and unfortunately, there was some mechanical and electrical breakdowns in some of both Rand Water's and Joburg Water's equipment. All of those factors together resulted in a situation where both Rand Water and Joburg Water struggled to fill their reservoirs, which meant that there wasn't enough water in the reservoirs for gravity feed to the high-lying areas. In the longer term, Paulie, it's very important that we finish the Lesotho Highlands Phase 2 project so that we can increase the amount of raw water going into the Vaal River system. At the moment, Rand Water is treating enough water to supply the normal demand in Johannesburg if we don't have this unfortunate concurrence of events that we had recently. But in the future, as the city grows and as Gauteng grows, there's going to be increased demand for water. So eventually, the availability of raw water from the Rand Water system will become a constraint. And that's where we come in, and NWRIA will come in that we need to raise a huge amount of money for Lesotho Highlands Phase 2 and for other raw water projects around the country so that we can make sure that there's enough raw water in the Vaal River system so that Rand Water can get enough raw water, an increasing amount of raw water in future, to purify and treat to supply to Joburg. And Rand Water also has plans to increase its purification capacity. They've got a project now which is going to be completed next year so that they can purify more water. So all of us need to do things. We need to provide more bulk water. Rand Water needs to provide more purified water. And Joburg Water needs to increase and improve its distribution infrastructure. And also, very importantly, Joburg Water needs to reduce the leaks in its distribution system so that as Rand Water and ourselves provide more bulk and then treated water, Joburg Water doesn't throw a lot of it away through leaks in the distribution system.
Yeah. Dr. Phillips, there's a particular reason I asked you that question, and I'm going to get into an argument with you right now, and it's got to do with the following, that the lack of rains and high temperatures simply cannot be an excuse because the dams that provide Gauteng with water were at 90% full, we were told. And so if you say that the sole reason why people in Gauteng experienced that kind of water shortage was as a result of load shedding, I'm amenable to say that or to take that excuse. But lack of rain, when dams are 90% full, surely that can't be an excuse. You've got to tell me something else.
Well, Coley, I said there were a variety of reasons which all work together to create the situation. I didn't say there were any sole reasons for it. But remember, while the dams are full doesn't mean that the water in the dams can just be transferred to Joburg and then come out of people's taps. That's raw water, which is not suitable for human consumption. It needs to be treated. So Rand Water plays the key role of treating the raw water. Now, Rand Water has a certain amount of capacity to treat water. And in a normal situation, when there aren't peaks in demand and problems caused by load shedding, then Rand Water has sufficient purification capacity to provide for the demand of Johannesburg. As I indicated, Rand Water is currently doing a project which will increase its purification capacity so that as demand increases in Johannesburg, it will be able to provide more raw water. But the key point is it doesn't logically follow that because the dams are full, that water can just come straight through to people's taps. It needs to be treated. So you need to have sufficient treatment capacity, and then you also need to have pumps which are available, which are working, and which have electricity to pump the water to reservoirs as well in order for the system to work and for water to come out of people's taps.
All right. Final question, and very briefly, if you can. Is infrastructure a problem at all in the reticulation of water?
Yes, we have lots of problems with our infrastructure as a country. Much of our infrastructure is very old and unfortunately hasn't been well maintained over decades. So we have very, very high levels of leakages of water in our distribution systems. The norm internationally is to lose about 15% of the water, the treated water, through leaks, but we're losing between 40 and 50% of our treated water through leaks on average in municipalities across South Africa. So it's a major focus for us as a department to work with municipalities to address this problem, and we're prioritizing our grants to municipalities and encouraging them to use those grants to address things like putting in bulk water meters, replacing old damaged pipes, etc., so that the leaks can be reduced.
Dr. Sean Phillips, let's leave the conversation there. This conversation confused me for a while, but I'll take what you're saying for the moment. That's the Director General of the Department of Water and Sanitation.